time. So we'll start with Dr. Gege Gatt, CEO of Ebo.ai. So when we talk of life in 20 years' time, whether it's Malta or internationally, the first thing that springs to mind is technology. So what do you think are the major technologies we will see over the next 2 decades, and how will they impact our lives?
Well, thank you, Chris. It's interesting that your question is phrased around the technology that we will see in 20 years' time. Well, I think the answer is that we probably won't see technology in 20 years' time. I think there are 2 reasons for that. Well, the first is we should become aware of the fact that we're going to say goodbye to our keyboard and mouse. The interaction methods that we will use with technology will change hugely. Voice will be very big, but in 10 to 15 years' time, brain-computer interfaces will certainly hit the shelves, and together with quantum computing, will radically change our perspective of technology. So brain-computer interfaces allow us to understand what the brain is thinking of and trigger an action in a computer without physically touching it. At the moment, we're using this in physical rehabilitation in a hospital environment, whereby we help paralyzed people to think about emotion, which triggers a computer action. But we're already moving that technology into neurogaming, where gamers would sit down comfortably, think of an action, and their avatar in a computer would actually do that action, perhaps move a hand or a leg. But in 15 years' time, that will radically change how we perceive technology and how it will morph. I think the second reason why we won't see technology is because of this concept of minimization. Well, Chris, at the minute, the average amount of devices connected per person is 2, perhaps your laptop, maybe a smartwatch. But in the next 20 years, that's considered to be going up to 19. So your toaster, your fridge, your car are all going to be connected. So we're going to be seeing this morphing of your digital space with your human space, all becoming one single platform. So it's going to be harder to identify what technology is. There are not obvious labels which are going to be around saying, AI inside or similar. And I think it's really this understanding that the most profound technologies that will evolve in times are the ones that are just going to disappear, because they're exactly the ones which weave themselves into the fabric of everyday life. And I think that's just magical.
Thank you very much. Maybe you can talk very quickly about some of the ethical dimensions of technology and some of the futuristic predictions that we've talked about here in your hands.
Sure, Chris. I think this discussion is often incorrectly pictured as, man versus machine. I think it's the wrong perspective. A researcher in this field, Yuval Harari, actually wrote a book called Homo Deus, literally, man is God, with the ability, therefore, to use technology to widen our scope of knowledge and abilities, almost replace natural selection with some type of information design paradigm. The truth is that in certain domains, in certain tasks, computers are not simply better than us, they're much better than us. And that gap which is created will never be regained. But really, the question here, which goes back to academia, is, but what is better? And what makes better better? Is it simply speed? Is it simply efficiency? And I think there are 2 key things that we need to focus on as a nation to make sure that we get technology right in the next 20 years. So I think the first one is being really sensitive about technology hype. I think there is a lack of literacy around AI and other technologies, and we need to take the time to explain these concepts very well, because otherwise our focus in a hyped environment will move to IT hype rather than to the real tough questions around societal impact. And the next thing which we need to get right is public policy. There's no doubt that the disruption that we've all spoken about today is placing a large amount of stress on regulators. Heathcliff touched on that too. So I think it's our job as a legislator to make sure that we have a good moral compass. We have an understanding of absolute morality, to make sure that the public policy frameworks we place now for the next 20 years give the right respect to human dignity, to human rights, to social justice. And I honestly believe, perhaps as a lawyer, that public policy is the vector which we need to use for human flourishing. And it is the right ethical framework to put in place to make sure that technology doesn't remain hype, but delivers the social good which could take Malta forward.
Thank you very, very much.